The hidden scripts, how government acts harmed Native Americans, dirty Moors take over Hollywood. I remember my big mama saying, "The devil wears a suit and tie," which is often interpreted as a metaphor for the devil appearing in a sophisticated, even appealing guise. This imagery suggests that temptation or evil can be disguised in a way that makes it seem less obvious or less frightening. It would be easier to send someone who looks like you to betray you, than someone who doesn't. You see, Judas looked like Yahshua, Jesus, and was from the same tribe. You see, the devil likes to blend in with you. He likes to get in your blood, tie himself into your vine. He goes with the philosophy of infiltration. Join them and divide them from within. The proverb, "If you can't beat them, join them," suggests that if you're unable to defeat an opponent or challenge, it might be more beneficial to cooperate with them rather than continuing to compete. This implies that sometimes aligning with or working alongside those you previously opposed can be a more advantageous strategy. Then use the old divide and conquer tactic. Divide and conquer refers to a strategic approach used in both political and algorithmic contexts. In politics, it involves creating divisions among opposing groups to weaken their collective strength and gain or maintain power. In computer science, it's a method for solving problems by breaking them down into smaller, more manageable sub-problems, solving those and then combining the solutions. It's about appearance versus reality. The devil wears a suit and tie can highlight the difference between how something appears on the surface and its true nature. It can suggest that evil can be hidden or camouflaged in places where we least expect it. The phrase is used to describe situations where someone or something appears harmless or even respectable but is actually malicious or harmful. The devil also carries a briefcase with paperwork and a pen in it. He also has explosives and weapons, such as a gun inside it. But the devil will admit that the pen is his favorite weapon of choice. He calls it his magic wand. Now, as we go through the video, we want you to keep these analogies and metaphors in mind. This whole thing is a movie played out by actors. The directors direct the films. The films are scripted. A film, often called a movie or motion picture, which is a visual art form that uses moving images, usually synchronized with sound, to tell stories, communicate ideas, and evoke emotions. It's a powerful medium for entertainment, education, and artistic expression. Films can be used to tell stories, document real-life events, explore abstract concepts, and even create immersive experiences. Film has a profound impact on how we perceive the world and ourselves, serving as a mirror to society and a catalyst for change. The word film, in the context of motion pictures, originates from the photographic film stock, which was the medium for recording and displaying such pictures. The word itself comes from Old English filmen, meaning membrane, thin skin, foreskin, ultimately stemming from a Proto-Germanic root related to animal hide. This original meaning of a thin flexible sheet then extended to the photographic film, which is a thin layer of light-sensitive material, and later to the motion picture itself. On glass, film typically refers to a thin, transparent, or tinted layer of material, often a plastic or polyester film, applied to the glass surface for various purposes like heat reduction, UV protection, or enhanced security. This film can be used for decorative purposes as well. It also can lessen the clear vision by 20%. There are 24 frames in films. The standard frame rate for cinematic films is 24 frames per second, FPS. This means that 24 individual still images are displayed each second to create the illusion of motion. While other frame rates exist, 24 FPS has become the standard for a number of reasons, including the introduction of sound and the need for a consistent frame rate for projection. Now, all this might sound like movie jogging, but it's all going to start to make sense here in the minute. The Druids write the scripts. The wand is the pen. Did you know magic wands are made from Hollywood? The Druids call it the magical tree. Hence the name Hollywood for their headquarters to cast their spells on the world. Hollywood, Los Angeles, a neighborhood in California, Hollywood, a metonym for the cinema of the United States. Hollywood is globally renowned as the center of the film and entertainment industry, attracting tourists and celebrities alike. It's famous for its iconic landmarks like the Hollywood sign, the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and major studios. Hollywood is home to many major film and television studios, including Sony Pictures, Universal Pictures, Warner Brothers, and Paramount Pictures. Hollywood was set up so that they could wave their wand and make their dog wag his tail. The metaphor "wag the dog" refers to a situation where a minor incident or fabricated event, the tail, is used to distract from a more important or embarrassing issue, the dog. The idea is that something unimportant or contrived is made to appear larger or more significant to shift public attention. Wag the dog ideology highlights how the media can be used to create a fabricated crisis or event to distract from a political scandal. The wag the dog tactic aims to change the public's focus from a negative issue to a seemingly more pressing one, effectively wagging the dog to control the narrative. In Wag the Dog, the movie, a fictional war is created to distract the public from the president's infidelity scandal. The film's release coincided with a time of political scandals and media manipulation, adding to its cultural relevance. The phrase wag the dog has become a political term used to describe situations where a fabricated event is used to distract from a scandal or other negative issue. The pens they wrote the acts, which are scripts with, was made from Hollywood, which the Druids believed possessed the ability to banish unwelcome spirits and command one's bidding, using their wands pen to make Native Americans disappear. The phrase, "he who controls the pen," refers to the person who writes history, shaping narratives and influencing how events are perceived. It implies that those who hold the power of writing have a significant impact on shaping public opinion and understanding. The ability to write and record events allows individuals to frame stories in a particular way, influencing how people interpret and remember historical occurrences. Those who control the pen, whether in a literal or metaphorical sense, often wield considerable power and influence. They can shape public discourse, dictate what is considered truth, and impact how people view the world. Throughout history, there have been instances where individuals or groups who controlled the pen have used their influence to promote specific ideologies, suppress dissent, or advance their own agendas, such as Horace Greeley. Horace Greeley was an American newspaper editor and publisher who was the founder and editor of the New York Tribune. In the digital age, with the rise of social media and online platforms, the concept of "he who controls the pen" takes on new dimensions. Those who can control the flow of information and shape online narratives continue to hold a significant amount of power. There are two bloodlines of Druids, one is the good side and the other side is bad. Most of the good side is locked up in American prisons. They can bake you a fresh batch of cookies with no oven. They can draw your face down to the bump or make you some fine wine fresh out the prison toilet. The Black Druids are wizards, witches, magicians, alchemists. The Druids were a social class within ancient Celtic societies, primarily known as religious leaders and keepers of knowledge, particularly in Ireland, Britain, and Gaul, modern-day France. They served as priests, judges, and teachers, responsible for conducting rituals, interpreting the natural world, and maintaining social order. They conducted sacrifices, rituals, and ceremonies often involving natural elements like trees and animals. Druids were revered as keepers of knowledge, including religious traditions, legal systems, and scientific understanding. Intermediaries. They acted as intermediaries between the human world and the spiritual realm, offering guidance and instruction. Today, there's a modern Druid movement that seeks to revive and adapt aspects of ancient Druid traditions, often focusing on environmentalism and nature-based spirituality. The Druids are those who draw it down, the writers, those who scribe, those who write the scripts, doctors, the nomos, those who claim to know the most. Don't doctors claim they know the most? They are your playwriters. They are the ones who were looking up from the water when the Anunnaki came here to Earth. The writers of the plays and scripts are the Druids, which connects to the 13 families of the Black Hand, the private-owned bankers, the Jesuits, and the Roman Empire, the Roman Church. You know the works. The script or roll is the paperwork, paper with pen ink to it. You must overstand contracts go galactical, so as it is on Earth, so as it is in heaven. So the only people who would want to use paperwork to steal your birthrights would be people or aliens not from Earth. Stealing land with paperwork, which are scripts. The Bible and the Quran are the main scripts. A part of that Bible script became known as the Doctrine of Discovery. The Doctrine of Discovery was a legal and religious concept that justified European colonization and land seizure in the Americas and elsewhere. It asserted that European explorers, by discovering lands already inhabited by indigenous peoples, acquired rights of ownership and sovereignty, disregarding the prior claims of the indigenous inhabitants. This doctrine was rooted in papal bulls, particularly Inter Caetera, issued in 1493 by Pope Alexander VI, which granted lands discovered by Catholic monarchs to those nations for the purpose of evangelization. The Squarebox TV. The word television can be broken down into tell-lie-vision. hinting at the idea that TV programs present a narrative or a vision of the world to the viewer. A lie is generally defined as a deliberately false statement or misleading assertion made with the intention to deceive someone. In essence, it's a statement made with the purpose of causing someone to believe something that is untrue. This perspective suggests that the content we consume on TV can influence how we perceive events, understand social issues, and even form our beliefs. A false perception, also known as a misperception or erroneous perception, is an inaccurate or incorrect understanding or interpretation of a sensory experience or stimulus. It's essentially perceiving something as being different from how it actually is. False perception is a broad term that encompasses any misinterpretation of a sensory input. A classic example is a visual illusion where the brain misinterprets visual information, leading to a false perception of reality. Other examples include misinterpreting sounds, smells, or tactile sensations. Distinction from false beliefs. Unlike false beliefs, false perceptions are not subject to evidence and may not change even when presented with contradictory information. The concept of false perception is relevant in psychology, philosophy, and even everyday life, impacting how we understand reality and how others perceive us. An illusion metaphor uses a figurative comparison to describe something as an illusion, implying it is not what it seems or is a misrepresentation. It's a way of explaining a concept, idea, or even an entire worldview as a deceptive or flawed perception of reality. An illusion metaphor uses a like or as statement to compare something, for example, consciousness, the self, a situation, to an illusion, highlighting its deceptive or misrepresentative nature. It suggests that something is being perceived incorrectly or interpreted in a way that doesn't align with its true nature. It can imply that the perceived reality is not a direct reflection of what is actually happening, but rather a filtered or simplified version. Now stay with us. This is about to get deep. This metaphor describes consciousness as a simplified version of reality, like a user interface on a computer, where our conscious experience is not a perfect reflection of what is happening, but rather a product of subconscious processing. Some philosophical perspectives suggest that the self is a mental construct, not a solid, distinct entity, and that the feeling of a distinct self is an illusion. This describes the tendency to overestimate our influence over events like the flip of a coin, highlighting the misperception of control. In marketing, this refers to the feeling of having many choices when the options are actually limited, designed to create a false sense of autonomy. These visual tricks create a misinterpretation of what we see, demonstrating how our brains can misinterpret sensory information. In essence, an illusion metaphor is a powerful tool for explaining complex concepts by drawing parallels to visual or experiential misinterpretations, highlighting the discrepancy between appearance and reality. Hypnosis through television, often referred to as remote control hypnosis, is a concept explored in both popular culture and scientific research. It suggests that individuals can be hypnotized, or have their subconscious influenced, through visual and auditory stimuli from television or other media. The idea of hypnosis as a tool for mind control or manipulation is a common theme in fiction, often portrayed as a way to influence behavior or control people's thoughts. Stage hypnosis, a form of entertainment, often incorporates elements that mimic the process of hypnotizing a person, with visual cues and suggestions designed to engage the audience. Reality shows and advertising. Some argue that modern reality shows and advertising techniques employ subtle hypnotic techniques to capture attention and influence viewers, using pacing, music, and visual cues to create an immersive experience. The physical environment of watching television, dim lighting, focused attention on the screen, can contribute to a state of trance, a state of altered consciousness that is often associated with hypnosis. Research suggests that media can influence the subconscious mind through repeated exposure to messages and visual imagery, potentially affecting behavior and attitudes. Some propose that television-based hypnosis could be used in mass education, group therapy, or to help people cope with stress or anxiety, particularly in situations where direct interaction is not possible. Stay with us. Watch now. Hypnosis is a form of mind control. The person being hypnotized is still in control of their actions and thoughts, and the effects of hypnosis are largely dependent on the individual's suggestibility. While television may not induce full hypnosis, it can subtly influence thoughts and behaviors through repeated exposure to messages and visual imagery, which can be a form of subtle persuasion. This video explains whether hypnosis as depicted on TV and in movies is actually realistic. Propaganda through TV involves using television content, including news, advertising, and public service announcements, to influence public opinion and promote a specific agenda. It can be done through techniques like emotional appeals, selective presentation of facts, and the use of loaded language to create a desired response in the audience. Propaganda on TV can be used for various purposes, including political, social, and commercial aims. Propaganda is communication designed to persuade or influence an audience towards a specific viewpoint or action, often by using emotional appeals and selective information. Common propaganda techniques on TV include using fear, patriotism, or other emotions to evoke a response. Selective presentation of facts, focusing on information that supports the desired viewpoint and downplaying contradictory evidence. Using words with strong emotional connotations to create a particular reaction. News segments can be biased towards a certain political perspective, using specific language and framing to influence viewers. Advertisements can use emotional appeals or deceptive tactics to persuade consumers to buy a product or service. Public service announcements can be used to promote a certain social message or viewpoint. Propaganda on TV can have a significant impact on public opinion and behavior, especially when it is presented in a way that is credible or authoritative. Keep in mind the cameras are the guns. That's why when they film they say I'm getting ready to shoot a movie or video. In the context of Hollywood screenwriting and filmmaking, an act refers to a key division within a screenplay, typically separating the narrative into distinct sections. These acts are often structured around plot points and help the storyteller create a well-paced and engaging narrative. A common structure in Hollywood is the three-act structure. Remember, all alchemy in this three-dimensional world is based on three. This framework divides a story into three main parts: the setup, Act 1, the confrontation, Act 2, and the resolution, Act 3. Act 1, setup, introduces the main characters, their world, and the inciting incident that sets the story in motion. The setup is that the main characters are some gods from out of space. Their world is not Earth, but their subjects live on Earth, which are humans. The inciting incident that sets the story in motion is that God will save you from the hell that He created, if you follow Him. Act 2. Confrontation. The protagonist faces obstacles and the story's tension builds. The confrontation is that in this world the god or gods, the main character in this movie, puts you through things in this cold world to test your faith. Act 3. Resolution. The story reaches its climax and the main conflict is resolved. The resolution is, in the end you get to go to heaven or outer space with God. Now don't that sound like a script, which becomes scriptures once you put your magic on it with the ooh and eyes. You also have Acts in the Bible, which has the same main three components. Acts continues the story of Christianity in the 1st century, beginning with the ascension of Jesus to heaven. The early chapters set in Jerusalem describe the day of Pentecost, the coming of the Holy Spirit, the expulsion of Christians from Jerusalem, and the establishment of the church at Antioch. While less common, some screenplays use a 4-act structure, which adds an additional act of midpoint and after effects. The 4th act or part is the loophole out of the movie. The midpoint, the part when you realize it's a movie, a script all alone. The part where the dog Total pulled the curtain off The Wizard of Oz. The part where Dorothy clicks her heels 3 times and goes home. By the way, I have a dog that can jump neck high. Have you seen him? You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Listen now, acts help organize the story, build suspense, and guide the audience through the narrative. They also provide a framework for the scriptwriter and actors to flow. In Hollywood, casting refers to the process of selecting actors to portray characters in a movie, TV show, or other production. This process involves a casting call, where actors submit their materials for consideration, followed by auditions and potentially callbacks before a final decision is made. These actors are wizards and witches who are paid to cast spells. Casting a spell refers to using words, gestures, and often specific components to evoke a magical effect. It's the act of invoking supernatural power through a specific ritual or incantation. In fantasy settings like those found in Dungeons and Dragons or Magic, The Gathering, casting a spell typically involves a combination of verbal and somatic components, and sometimes material components, to unleash the desired effect. The actors are the enforcers. The army, police, public school teachers, doctors, lawyers, or lawmen, and the masses of people who's not up to speed and still asleep. All jobs are acting roles in a movie. When you go to get a job as a police officer, you're handed a script to follow. They call it a work handbook of job codes and conduct. Every job comes with a handbook, a script. That's how you know it's an acting role. In Hollywood, an actor is a performer who portrays characters in films, television shows, and other media. Their primary role is to bring characters to life, expressing their emotions and motivations to an audience. Actors use their vocal and physical techniques to convey a character's emotions and intentions. Depending on how good and skilled of a wizard or witch they are, may help them land the part, job, or role that needs to be played in the movie or film, which is being projected on the screen for public view. Actors work with scripts, acts, to understand their character's role and how they fit into the story. Actors collaborate with directors to interpret their roles and bring their visions to the screen, which is the streets. Ever hear someone say, "I'm about to hit the scene"? In movies, a scene is a self-contained unit of storytelling that takes place at a specific time and place, involving one or more characters and a particular action or series of events. It's like a mini-movie within the larger film, with its own beginning, middle, and end. Scenes are the building blocks of a narrative, connecting to form the overall plot. The words screen, scene, scheme, and street are synonymous. Meaning of scheme in English: an organized plan for doing something, especially something dishonest or illegal that will bring a good result for you. In a narrative sense, a scheme often refers to a plan or plot devised by characters, especially when it involves cunning or deception, often with a self-serving motive. For example, a villain's evil plan to take over the world could be described as a scheme. Your scene or scheme gives the actor playing the part or role purpose. In storytelling, a scene serves a clear purpose, going beyond simply depicting an event. It functions as a tool to advance the plot, reveal character, and create emotional impact for the audience. Every scene should have a specific goal, whether it's introducing a new character, deepening our understanding of existing ones, or setting up future plot points. Every actor has his or her scenes or scheme which comes with script. All scenes or scheme come with a script. Some people's scene or scheme is Islam, the religion, and their script is the Quran. Some people's scene or scheme is Christianity, and their script is the Bible. The acting profession is highly competitive, and actors often face multiple auditions and rejections before landing a role. Some people play the role of pastor or ministers, singers, gangster rappers, tough guys, a street or hood guys, which are all roles or acts in a movie. Whether the actor take the role serious or overdo it is based on how much emotion the actor put into the role. More emotional input makes it more believable. Building a successful acting career in Hollywood requires perseverance, dedication, and a willingness to work hard. The term Hollywood actor is often associated with the major studios and film industry located in Hollywood, California. These actors always say they're just doing their job. In a movie, an actor's job as a military leader involves portraying the character of a leader within a military organization, such as a general, commander, or other officer. They need to convey the qualities of leadership, strategy, and authority, often while facing complex situations and making high-stakes decisions according to backstage. Their performance includes delivering speeches, commanding troops, and making tactical choices that impact the plot and the narrative of the film. So the police, doctors, public teachers, lawyers, and etc. all follow a script. They are all playing a part in this movie, policies or scripts. Some actors add their own spin on the script to add more special effects to the movie role. Did you know Ronald Reagan was indeed an actor before he became a politician and president? He began his acting career in the 1930s, appearing in a number of films before entering the military during World War II. Ronald Reagan was hired to play president in a movie. The actor needs to convey the qualities of a leader, such as decisiveness, strategic thinking, and the ability to inspire and motivate others according to backstage. Keep in mind, backstage is the United Nations. They will likely interact with other actors who are portraying other military personnel, soldiers, or civilians, and their interactions will help develop the story on the world stage, and the actor needs to project an air of authority and confidence, which can be achieved through their delivery, posture, and overall performance according to backstage. The actor may need to research historical military tactics, customs, and leadership styles to ensure a realistic portrayal according to task and purpose, and they may even consult with military experts. In a movie, an actor's role as an army or police member can vary greatly, ranging from portraying a high-ranking officer to a common soldier. This can involve wearing uniforms, learning military procedures, and sometimes even requiring physical training to match the demands of the character. Actors might portray generals, sergeants, soldiers, police, doctors, lawyers, spies, which all are acts, a role play. The portrayal can involve a range of situations, from active combat to training, administrative tasks, and even supporting roles within a military unit. Depending on the role, actors may need to undergo physical training, learn weapon handling, and even learn specific military tactics or maneuvers to convincingly represent their character. Actors will often need to wear accurate military uniforms and gear, which can include helmets, vests, and weapons, to match the era and unit they are portraying. Some films may involve consulting with military advisors to ensure the accuracy of military procedures and tactics, which can help actors learn and perform their roles more convincingly. The relationship between the military and the entertainment industry is complex, with the Department of Defense, DoD, having a say in films that use military equipment or film on military installations. In essence, an actor portraying an army or police member in a movie must not only understand the role of their character, but also the broader context of military life procedures and the often complex relationship between the military and the film industry. The directors are the local and world government presidents and CEOs. They're your film directors or filmmakers. They're the person who controls a film's artistic and dramatic aspects and visualizes the screenplay, or script, while guiding the film crew and actors in the fulfillment of that vision. Directors use wands, which can translate into the pen. You see Donald Trump signing away? Keep in mind, wizards and witches carry wands. Directors or conductors use a wand, also known as a baton, pen, to provide clear and precise guidance to musicians, particularly in orchestral and band settings. The baton is a visual aid that helps musicians stay in time and follow the conductor's cues. It emphasizes the metrical pulse of the music and can be used to indicate tempo, dynamics, and other interpretive nuances. The director has a key role in choosing the cast members, production design, and all the creative aspects of filmmaking in cooperation with the producer. The film director gives direction to the cast and crew and creates an overall vision through which a film eventually becomes realized or noticed. Directors need to be able to mediate differences in creative visions and stay within the budget. The directors are the government. In Hollywood, a script director isn't a standard title or role. The primary roles related to scripts are: 1. Screenwriter. This individual writes the screenplay, developing the story, dialogue, and overall narrative. The screenwriters are the Druids. 1. Director. The director interprets the screenplay and guides the actors and crew to bring the story to life visually and dramatically. The directors are the world government. They work closely with the producer to develop a vision for the film. 1. Script doctor. A script doctor is hired to review and revise a script, often focusing on specific areas like dialogue, character development, or pacing. The script doctors are the legislative branch. 1. Script supervisor. This person manages the script during filming, ensuring continuity and tracking changes. The script supervisors are the executive branch. While the term script director isn't used, screenwriters write the script, directors interpret and guide its visual execution, and script doctors and supervisors work with the script throughout the production process as a group which becomes known as Congress. Did you know Congress is the opposite of progress? Keep in mind, acts are not law. An act is a specific piece of legislation, script, passed by a legislative body, while law is a broader term encompassing all rules and regulations that govern a society, natural laws. Essentially, an act is a formal enactment that, once approved, becomes part of the larger body of acts being passed off as law. An act is a written script of a legislative body, passed by both houses and signed by the president, director, or the equivalent authority, that establishes a new script to the movie or amends an existing one. Acts are created through the formal legislative process, starting with a script call, a bill introduced to the legislature. Acts typically address specific areas or issues. The terms act and law are sometimes used interchangeably in legal contexts. Acts are not really law, they are scripts. The only real law on the land is the Constitution. The Constitution is the supreme script law of the land. If you just so happen to find yourself in one of their venues called Kangaroo Court, if you haven't violated the Constitution or any natural laws, you haven't broken any laws. Keep in mind, a court is a place where games are played. The court is a stage for actors to play out a script. What acts are is color of law. Color of law refers to actions taken by government officials, directors, particularly actors such as law enforcement, while they are perceived to be exercising their official duties. Script. It's a legal principle that holds individuals accountable for violating someone's natural rights when they are acting under the guise of their official authority. roles, meaning they can't go outside the script. This principle is crucial in cases where government officials, directors, abuse their power, infringing on individual natural rights protected by the 14th Amendment and other natural laws. Color of law violations occur when these official actors use their authority or position to deprive individuals of their natural-born rights or freedoms. The term specifically applies to government officials, directors, and actor roles such as police officers, judges, and other law enforcement personnel, acting within the scope of their official duties, script. Law refers to the general rules and principles that govern society. Land laws originate from natural laws. Laws cover a wide range of legal matters and are intended to apply to the entire jurisdiction where they are in effect. An act is a formal script of legislative measure enacted by a governing body, directors, while indigenous law, which are natural laws, encompasses the legal systems and practices developed by indigenous communities, often rooted in oral, traditional, and customary natural laws. Acts are written documents, scripts, that define specific rules and regulations. Indigenous law refers to the legal systems and practices developed and maintained by indigenous communities. It often includes customary laws, traditions, and cultural practices passed down through generations. Indigenous law may be expressed through oral traditions, ceremonies, or specific rules within a community. When referring to federal acts, the United States Constitution is the supreme law of the land. It supersedes all other federal acts, scripts, state acts, and even treaties which are acts. However, when discussing the Indian law of the United States, which is a stage, it's more about the legal framework, motive, that recognizes the sovereignty of Indian tribes, subject victims, to the overriding authority, action, of the federal government, directors of the movie, who are foreign occupation. This authority, action, is exercised through various acts, scripts of Congress, including the Indian Citizenship Act of 1924 and the Tribal Law and Order Act, which are not really laws, besides the Native American tribal laws. In the context of Canadian law, the Indian Act is the key piece of legislation, paperwork, concerning Indigenous peoples. The Constitution, along with federal acts and treaties, forms the supreme law of the United States. Federal Indian Acts acknowledges a unique form of tribal sovereignty, subject to the federal government's authority, directors. This act, script, is the main legislative, paperwork, framework, motive, concerning Indigenous peoples in Canada. While Indian tribes have a degree of sovereignty, it's always subject, victims, to federal acts and in some cases the acts of the individual states if they're crooks. The Constitution also protects the rights of Indigenous peoples in the United States, but the Indigenous international right supersedes the USA Constitution. Tribal nations also have their own internal legal systems and customs that govern their own communities. Federal Indian acts and Indigenous laws are constantly evolving as the legal and political landscape changes. Technically, the feds can't make any arrest or laws because they're unconstitutional and work for a foreign entity. They only can make acts and pass them off as laws. This is why they need the sheriff to enforce their acts. Now, this next stuff I'm about to tell you might sound like some cowboys versus aliens or some Indians versus aliens, but it's the truth when you think about it. Listen close, the bad Druids are avatars. An avatar body is a genetically engineered hybrid combining colonizing aliens and natives of the planet DNA, used by off-world extraterrestrials to operate or remotely control and experience the world of humans on Earth in a human body or suit. These hybrid bodies allow aliens to navigate Earth's environment without needing protective gear and to more easily interact with the native Earth humans. Avatar bodies are created through advanced genetic engineering, combining DNA from the operator or driver with Earth humans' DNA or the body type of the targeted planet. They call these beings hybrids. The extraterrestrials have technology to do genetic engineering, cloning, and make synthetic humans. Most advanced interdimensional aliens can do walk-ins or possessions by taking over a pre-existing body. Sometimes this is called incarnation. Artificial humans refer to various types of simulated or constructed beings that mimic human characteristics, behaviors, or appearances. This can include digital avatars, humanoid robots, and even synthetic beings created through cloning or genetic engineering. Photorealistic virtual versions of humans, often with AI-powered personalities and the ability to interact and have conversations. Humanoid robots, sometimes made of flesh-like materials that can mimic human functions and behaviors. The aliens have this technology. Biomechanical humanoids that closely emulate humans in appearance and actions. Humans with cybernetic implants, not considered artificial humans in the same way as androids or synthetics. virtual, computer-generated individuals used in simulations and AI testing to mimic human behaviors. Technically artificial humans, as they are not naturally created. Alien operators can psionically connect with their human Earth body, allowing them to control its movements and experience the world through the avatar's perspective. Avatars are primarily used to explore planets not compatible with the colonizing species of alien who study the Earth-diverse cultures and engage with the environment without the need for exopacks or other protective gear. Avatar bodies often resemble the planet's native body types, with brown to pale skin and other characteristic features, allowing for easier interaction with the native inhabitants. Keep in mind, in Avatar, the Resource Development Administration, RDA, targeted the Omaticaya Navi's home tree because it contained a rich deposit of unobtainium, a rare and valuable resource. The RDA's primary goal was to gain control of the unobtainium by forcefully evicting the Navi and destroying the home tree, which was their ancestral home and a sacred site. The Anunnaki targeted Earth because they needed gold. The colonizers targeted America because they wanted gold when they landed. Now you understand what Pocahontas Mantawaka and John Rolfe the Moors was all about. The movie Avatar and Pocahontas storyline are the same storyline. John Smith and John Rolfe were Moorish avatars. Just like in the movie Avatar, they look like them but wasn't them. They look like humans but were in fact alien colonizers who came looking like Earthborn humans but wasn't Earthborn humans. They were wolves in sheep clothing. The Fire Nation ruled the world. The bad Druids were fire worshippers and landed in the city of Ur. They were Els and Al, the dark-skinned Moors. They were sons of God, El. These beings had explosives. They are wizards, alchemists, and knew about gunpowder and plutonium. They taught their human children, according to Genesis chapter 6, what they knew. They were also known as the Watchers, the ones who taught humans a variety of forbidden knowledge, including magic, weaponry, cosmetics, metallurgy, and astronomy. Specifically, they taught enchantments and root cuttings, semjaza, astrology, barakial, astronomy and constellations, kokabiel, weather lore and divination, chazakiel, the solar mysteries, shamsiel, the lunar cycles, serial, writing and reading, penemuel, and diagnosis and healing, kashdejan. Additionally, they taught humans the art of making weapons and cosmetics. Their children who are wizards and witches became known as the bad Druids, the Els, the elect, the elite. A wizard is a scholar of the occult arts and highly skilled in practicing magic. Mentions of wizards date back to the biblical era. The wizards set the stage for the illusion. The stage illusion, which are tricks that's big enough to be performed in a large auditorium such as Earth. You must keep in mind this is a conjure. If magic has a verb, it's conjure. The verb refers to bringing something about or affecting something by magic. The magician conjured up a rabbit out of a hat. There are many magical words such as abracadabra, hocus pocus, alakazam, bibbidi-bobbidi-boo, simsalabim, shazam, and avada kedavra. But the Druids' favorite magical sound or word of all is boom. The sound guns, bombs, TNT, atomic and nuclear bombs make. Imagine a wagon of TNT rolling up into your village from out of nowhere then blowing up. These activities were carried out on and near Native American lands, historically leading to environmental damage and disruption of traditional ways of life. The use of TNT and other explosives can contaminate soil and water resources with toxic compounds. This contamination, in turn, can harm ecosystems and make it difficult for Native American communities to maintain their traditional lifeways. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, life movie stage saw significant conflict and violence between the United States and Native American tribes. The railroad's expansion into territories inhabited by Native Americans, which utilized explosives for construction, led to conflict and undermined the sovereignty of Native nations. The Fire Nation's control over the world. The Druids' control was built through a combination of military dominance, advanced technology, and a highly centralized, propagandistic government. Their rise to power was fueled by the 6,000-year war, where they conquered much of the Earth Kingdom as nomads, and then Romans, people with no homeworld and planet poachers. The Fire Nation had a powerful military, including a strong navy and an advanced air force with war balloons and airships. This allowed them to launch raids, conquer territories, and effectively control the seas. They were the most technologically advanced nation, utilizing steamships, railways, and advanced weapons like drills and trebuchets. This gave them a significant advantage in warfare and enabled them to build a vast empire. The Fire Nation had a highly centralized government, with the Fire Lord holding absolute power. They used propaganda to control the population, and maintain their dominance, with a focus on national education and detailed record-keeping. They expanded their control by establishing colonies on the mainland, using the resources and labor of the Earthborn Kingdom. These colonies, though initially established to exploit the Earthborn Kingdom, eventually became prosperous and even resistant to the Fire Nation's authority. Gunpowder was also a significant factor. The Fire Nation's bullets, bombs, and guns made them highly skilled and capable, making them a formidable force in battle. The firepower becomes the props in the movie. Now these are acts that significantly harmed Native Americans. These acts were played out on the Native American people as a thriller, drama, and action film or movie. History unfolds like a vast, unending drama. Governments often act as powerful, unseen directors. They write the scripts, these laws and policies. Native Americans were cast in a tragic role they never auditioned for. Their lands became the unwilling stage. Their lives were irrevocably altered by acts penned far away. The United States government was relentless. Treaties, once sacred pacts, became malleable props. The ink on these papers was often mixed with blood and tears. The actors, soldiers, colonizers, pirates, and bureaucrats played their parts with varying degrees of zeal. Bureaucrats are official in a government department, in particular one perceived as being concerned with procedural correctness at the expense of people's needs. The government's play sought to erase entire cultures, but the spirit of a people is not so easily extinguished. This movie will explore these hidden scripts, these government acts that systematically harmed Native American communities. We will examine the devastating scenes that unfolded, from forced removals to cultural assimilation. The year 1830 marked a dark scene in this unfolding drama. The U.S. government, under President Andrew Jackson, unveiled a particularly cruel script, the Indian Removal Act. The aim was to move southeastern tribes, the Cherokee, Creek, Seminole, Chickasaw, and Choctaw, from their ancestral homelands. The script promised new lands west of the Mississippi, painting them as a haven. But this promise was a hollow echo, a deceptive monologue designed to justify a brutal land grab. When Andrew Jackson called action on this script movie, and the curtains rolled back, the Native Americans were left at the low end of the stick. President Andrew Jackson, the Druid bulldog, was let off the chain. Even after the Supreme Court's ruling in Native Americans' favor, Jackson overlooked the law and still set out to remove the Native Americans off their land. The lawman stood there looking the other way as long as he was getting a $20 kickback from Washington, D.C. Just goes to show you they don't honor treaties or their own ruling and paperwork. The primary actors, enforcers, were the military and state militias, tasked with compelling compliance. The script demanded that Native peoples abandon everything, their homes, their farms, their way of life, and kick rocks. This act set a terrifying precedent, a blueprint for future dispossessions. The curtain rose on an era of forced marches, some staged and promoted with profound sorrow. Not all of the Native Americans left their land. Some of the marches were staged acts to create special effects, to make it appear like the Native Americans left their land. They hired crisis actors from other countries to dress up like Native Americans and pretend to march. They did the same thing with the Boston Tea Party, where they paid crisis actors to dress up like Native Americans and dump tea into the sea. Listen at this. What if Andrew Jackson didn't break any laws? Why? Because he was acting out the Indian Removal Act to make it look like the Native Americans left their land. Meanwhile, the government, directors with the help of the Druids, writers, used their wand, pen, to erase the dark-skinned Native Americans of Turtle Island out of history. The Indian Removal Act was the prologue to a devastating performance of human suffering. The most infamous scene born from this act was the Trail of Tears. This was the forced relocation of the government-created and hand-picked tribe, the Cherokee Nation among others, to designated Indian Territory in present-day Oklahoma. The script demanded they walk through brutal conditions. Thousands perished along the way. Families torn apart, the elderly and the very young struggling to keep pace. Soldiers prodded them onward, often with cruelty and indifference. They faced starvation, disease, and exposure to harsh weather. The trail was littered with unmarked graves. Keep in mind, guns are props. In a movie, props are any objects that an actor can interact with or that are visible in the background of a scene. They are used to enhance the realism of a scene, convey information about the characters or environment, and add to the storytelling. Props can be anything from a small object like a pen or a cup to large items like a car or a tree. The Cherokee had tried to play by the director's script. The Trail of Tears is more than a historical event. It is a scar on the American conscience. The trauma of this forced exodus continues to affect Cherokee descendants today. The mid-19th century saw the directors of the American drama seeking to fill the vast stage of the West. The script for this act was the Homestead Act of 1862. It offered 160 acres of public land to any colonizers willing to live on and cultivate it for 5 years. However, this script had a hidden, devastating clause for Native Americans. Much of this public land was ancestral Native territory. The Homestead Act acted as a powerful magnet, drawing colonizers westward. These colonizers became unwitting actors in the dispossession of indigenous peoples. The script encouraged them to see the land as empty, as wilderness waiting to be tamed. The prairies, once teeming with bison, were rapidly fenced and plowed under. This legislation was a masterstroke of colonial expansion. It effectively weaponized colonization. Each homestead claim was another nail in the coffin of Native territorial integrity. The consequences for Native nations were catastrophic. The Homestead Act was a key instrument in the broader strategy of confining, controlling, and attempting to erase Native American societies. By the late 19th century, the U.S. government realized that outright removal, staged marches, and military conquest were not enough. There were still too many dark-skinned Native Americans. The General Allotment Act of 1887, commonly known as the Dawes Act, was drafted. Promoted by reformers, it aimed to dismantle tribal structures. The goal was to break up Native American tribal lands and distribute them as individual plots. Rooted in Euro-American concepts of private property and individualism, it attacked the communal ethos central to Native American cultures, aimed to transform Native Americans into yeoman farmers. Each head of household received an allotment, typically 160 acres. However, the true performance of the Dawes Act was far from its stated intentions. Surplus land was declared open for sale to non-native colonizers, resulting in a massive loss of native land. The act also undermined tribal sovereignty and governance. The Dawes Act was a sophisticated tool of cultural and economic warfare, designed to unravel indigenous societies from within, shattering tribal bonds and lands. The Dawes Act, presented as a benevolent script for progress, played out as a cruel deception. The individual allotments were often too small to support a family through agriculture. Many Native individuals lacked the capital, tools, or experience with Euro-American farming techniques. The result was widespread poverty and increased dependence on government rations. The concept of surplus land was a particularly cynical part of the director's plan. After tribal members received their individual parcels, vast areas of reservation territory were deemed excess and open to white colonizers. The script ensured that the best lands often ended up in non-native hands, also called white folks. The checkerboard pattern of ownership further fragmented communities. The Dawes Act also had a devastating impact on tribal governance and social cohesion. By forcing individual ownership, it undermined the authority of tribal leaders. The script aimed to dissolve the tribe as a political and social unit. The allotted lands were often held in trust by the federal government. The Dawes Act was a tragedy of errors and ill intent. In the Dawes Act and other documents, the government used their paperwork and their magic wand, the pen, to make the Native Americans disappear. After they exterminated 400 million Native American people through 200 years of wars, disease, and starvation, they used their wand, the pen, and their magical word colored to make 100 million dark-skinned Native Americans disappear. They did this using paperwork and pen. It's called paper genocide. Paper genocide, in the context of Native American history, refers to the deliberate process of erasing or distorting the identity and existence of Native peoples through official documentation and records. This was a calculated script to marginalize Native communities and hinder their ability to gain state and federal recognition from the directors. They used official classification and then erasure. Government officials, directors in some cases, deliberately recorded Native Americans as other racial categories, such as blacks, Negroes, or colored, on official documents despite their indigenous identity. This practice aimed to diminish or eliminate their indigenous identity and enforce assimilation. The cold script caused major impact on tribal recognition. This paper genocide made it difficult for some Native American tribes to gain federal recognition from the directors. For example, the Narragansett people in Rhode Island faced challenges in gaining recognition due to records where they were identified as other races. The Mashpee Wampanoag tribe also faced difficulties with inconsistent data from the U.S. Census Bureau. Another act which was scripted out against the Native Americans was the Racial Integrity Acts and One-Drop Rule. Plays like the Racial Integrity Act in Virginia, 1924, imposed strict definitions of racial categories leading to the erasure of indigenous identity. If you had one drop of dark skin, which included all Native Americans, you became colored in this new script called the Racial Integrity Act. This is paper genocide in its highest form. Officials would classify individuals as colored, regardless of their indigenous heritage, based on the one-drop rule. Difficulty in proving lineage. These policies created challenges for Virginia Indian tribes in proving their unbroken lineage, a requirement for federal recognition. The legacy of paper genocide continues to impact Native American communities today, making it difficult for some individuals to prove their ancestral lineage and claim their indigenous identity. In essence, paper genocide was a form of bureaucratic and legal suppression designed to eliminate the recognition and documentation of Native American tribes and people, impacting their ability to maintain their cultural heritage, assert their rights, and achieve formal recognition. Over 100 million Native Americans vanished by the strike of a pen, under the word colored. They all turned into blacks, Negroes, colored, and then later into African Americans. Then, they all came from Africa on a slave ship in the new movie storyline. All done with pen and paper. Any great Native American in history, they used their magic wand and changed them from dark-skinned natives to white. The other 400 million Native American were exterminated over a period of 250 years. The director said, "Now we're about to roll back the curtains, and when we do, you are not Native Americans no more. You are now Negroes, blacks, and colored folks." Action. Man, what a cold script. The script of westward expansion and native dispossession led to the creation of reservations. These designated lands became the unwilling stages upon which native peoples were forced to live out new, constricted lives. The U.S. government portrayed reservations as protected havens. However, they often functioned as open-air prisons. They pumped liquor onto the reservation to keep the actors out of it. Life on these reservations was a stark departure from traditional existence. The freedom to roam, hunt, and gather was gone. Government rations replaced self-sufficiency. The spiritual connection to vast ancestral landscapes was severed. The reservation system was also a tool for surveillance and assimilation. Economically, reservations were often designed for failure. The legacy of this system is still profoundly felt today. All these things were acts to cover up truth. The real Native Americans are still on their land. The reservation were set up for movie crisis actors to play Indian on the world screen for a 300-year-long movie. As long as they, the actors, stick to the script, they get paid by the director. They passed all these acts, script, to paint a picture of war and that the Native Americans lost. This is a part of the conjure. What if it's all an illusion, a setup? What if half of the stuff they're telling you never happened like you think it did? What if it was all acts or a movie so that they could move the real Native Americans off their land in their mind and in the world's eye? What if all of this is staged, just like the Boston Tea Party? Did all this stuff really happen the way they say it did? What if it's all an act to move you in a particular direction? Movies are designed to move the eye, you know. The people they say they chased off the land are mostly crisis actors used to hide the real script or conjure. It's a part of a 300-year movie called The American Indians, not the Native Americans. There is a difference, you know. Every time they show you a Hollywood film about Native Americans, they always show you the reservation Indians, not the ones who they reclassified as slaves, blacks, Negroes, and colored folks. Between the Revolutionary War and the aftermath of the Civil War, over the course of almost a century, the United States and Native American nations signed some 368 treaties, scripts, that would define their relationship for centuries to come. The treaties keyed off the fundamental idea that each tribal group was an independent nation, with their own right to self-determination and self-rule. But as white colonizers began moving onto Native American lands, this idea came into conflict with the relentless pace of westward expansion, resulting in many broken promises on the part of the U.S. government, directors. In the 1500s, colonizers significantly impacted Native Americans, particularly with the arrival of Europeans. These included the introduction of diseases like smallpox, measles, and cholera, leading to massive population declines. Additionally, the doctrine of discovery, a cold script, later used to justify land claims, and the Treaty of Tordesillas, which divided newly discovered lands between Spain and Portugal, had long-term consequences for Native American peoples. The arrival of Europeans brought not only no trade goods and bad ideas, but also devastating diseases like typhus. Native Americans had no immunity to these diseases, resulting in widespread death and dramatic population decline. The doctrine of discovery, rooted in papal bulls issued in the 1400s, asserted that Christian nations had the right to claim territories and resources in newly discovered lands. This doctrine was later used by the U.S. government to justify ignoring Native American land titles and taking over their land, as seen in cases like Johnson v. McIntosh. In 1494, the Treaty of Tordesillas divided newly discovered lands between Spain and Portugal, creating a division that would impact the future of Native American populations in the Americas. This agreement, although not directly affecting Native Americans, set the stage for European colonization and the subsequent conflicts and displacement that followed. European colonizers, particularly the Spanish and Portuguese, sought to convert Native Americans to Christianity. This often involved forcing Native Americans to give up their traditional spiritual beliefs and practices, leading to cultural and religious disruption. The Indian Appropriations Act, 1851, was another cold script. This act established a process for dividing tribal lands among individual Native Americans, ultimately contributing to the loss of tribal land and the rise of reservations. Several key acts passed in the 1700s significantly impacted Native Americans, including the Proclamation of 1763, Trade and Intercourse Acts, and the Quebec Act of 1774. These acts aimed to regulate westward expansion, trade, and land ownership, ultimately affecting the lives and lands of Native American tribes. Proclamation of 1763. This act, issued by the British government, established a boundary line along the Appalachian Mountains, prohibiting colonists from settling west of it. While ostensibly intended to protect colonists from Native American tribes, many colonists viewed it as a pro-Indian measure, as it acknowledged Native American land rights according to legal timelines, Trade and Intercourse Acts. These acts, starting with the first one in 1790, aimed to regulate trade and interactions between the United States and Native American tribes. They established the U.S. government's power to enter treaties with Indian nations and defined who was considered Indian and non-Indian, influencing land ownership and relationships. This act, aimed at addressing French-Canadian discontent, expanded the boundaries of Quebec, which Native Americans viewed as an infringement on their land rights. It also extended Quebec's influence over territories previously considered part of Indian lands. While not an act directly passed in the 1700s, the third ordinance addressed policy towards Native Americans, emphasizing the need for treaties and acknowledging their land rights. European explorers and colonists, starting with the Spanish, began to claim and colonize territories in the Americas. This process led to the displacement of Native American communities from their ancestral lands and resources. The Spanish developed the encomienda system, which granted colonists the right to demand labor and tribute from Native Americans in exchange for protection and Christian instruction, often resulting in exploitation and abuse. New Laws of the Indies, 1542. The New Laws of the Indies issued by Charles V of Spain aimed to limit the power of encomenderos, those granted encomiendas, and protect indigenous populations from exploitation, though they faced opposition and were not fully implemented. Native Americans were often subjected to forced labor in mines, agriculture, and other industries. Colonization disrupted Native American cultures, traditions, and social structures, leading to the loss of languages, beliefs, and ways of life. In the 1600s, several actions and events directly impacted Native Americans. These included direct violence, forced labor, disease, and the Treaty of 1677, which significantly impacted the Powhatan people. Conflicts like the Jamestown Massacre, 1622, Pequot War, 1636, and King Philip's War, 1675, resulted in the loss of life and displacement of Native Americans. Forced labor and enslavement. New England colonists sold Native American captives into slavery in the West Indies and Bermuda, and courts could sentence Native Americans to forced labor. The introduction of European diseases like smallpox, brought over by settlers, led to devastating epidemics among Native American populations. Land confiscation. Treaties like the 1677 treaty with the Powhatan resulted in the loss of land and reduced Native American populations to the status of tributaries. Puritan colonizers, motivated by a belief in the righteousness of their civilization, aimed to replace Native American cultures with their own. This treaty, signed between the English settlers and the Powhatan, led to the Powhatan losing a significant portion of their land and becoming tributaries to the colonizers. The Indian Act, particularly in Canada, it was a cruel script. It had a profound and often detrimental impact on Indigenous peoples. It established a system of status, defined who was considered Indian under the law, and imposed various restrictions and policies that marginalized and dispossessed Indigenous communities. The Act's enfranchisement provisions, which allowed individuals to lose their status in exchange for citizenship, particularly affected women and their children, leading to a loss of rights and recognition. It defining who was Indian and creating a status system. The Indian Act created a legal category of status Indian, which referred to individuals registered under the Act. This system, while offering some benefits like tax exemptions, also created a paternalistic relationship between the federal government and First Nations. The Act's definition of Indian excluded many people who identified as Indigenous but didn't meet the criteria, leading to a sense of exclusion and inequity. The Act's enfranchisement provisions allowed individuals to lose their Indian status in exchange for Canadian citizenship. This often resulted in the loss of rights for Indigenous women and their children, especially when they married non-Indigenous individuals. These provisions were discriminatory and led to significant disruptions in Indigenous families and communities. The Act placed various restrictions on Indigenous peoples, including limitations on leaving reserves without permission, voting rights, and political activities. It also led to the establishment of residential schools, which caused significant cultural and intergenerational trauma. Traditional and ceremonial practices were often banned, further disrupting Indigenous cultures and ways of life. The Indian Act has been amended several times, but many of its core provisions and effects remain. It continues to influence Indigenous governance, status, and rights. The Act has been criticized for its discriminatory nature and its impact on Indigenous self-determination and self-government. In the United States, the Indian Removal Act of 1830 had a devastating impact on Native American tribes, leading to forced displacement and relocation to Indian Territory, now Oklahoma. This policy resulted in significant loss of land, cultural disruption, and hardship for many tribes. In conclusion, the Indian Act's impact on Indigenous peoples has been multifaceted and long-lasting. While it offered some benefits, it also imposed significant restrictions and inequalities, contributing to the marginalization and displacement of Indigenous communities. Another cold script was the Act for the Government and Protection of Indians, passed in 1850 by the California legislature, was a discriminatory law that essentially forced California Indians into servitude. This legislation had several detrimental effects on Native Californians, including forced labor, displacement from their lands, and the loss of family and cultural ties. The law provided for the forced labor of Native Americans, particularly those who were considered loitering or vagrant, and also established a system for regulating their employment. This effectively legalized a form of Indian slavery. The Act facilitated the removal and displacement of Native Californians from their traditional lands. This was often done forcibly and led to the loss of homes and traditional ways of life, loss of family and cultural ties. The Act contributed to the disruption of Native families and communities by facilitating the removal of children and adults, often separating them from their families and cultural traditions. Criminalization of traditional practices. The Act included provisions that criminalized certain Native American practices such as cultural burning of grasslands. It created suppression of tribal authority. The Act undermined the authority of Native American tribal leaders and communities, further weakening their ability to govern themselves. Erosion of legal protections. The Act effectively stripped Native Americans of many of their legal protections, making them vulnerable to abuse and exploitation. Consequences of the Act. It created significant population decline. Between 1850 and 1870, the Native Californian population in Los Angeles decreased dramatically, from 3,693 to 219 people. Long-term trauma and cultural loss. The Act and its associated policies had a profound and lasting impact on Native Californian communities, contributing to a legacy of trauma, cultural loss, and ongoing struggles for self-determination. Perhaps one of the most heartbreaking scenes in the government's long play of assimilation was the era of Indian boarding schools. The script for this act was chillingly simple: kill the Indian and save the man. This philosophy guided a systematic effort to eradicate native cultures by forcibly re-educating indigenous children. Children and whole families were being imported from other countries to be trained on how to take the Native Americans' culture and place. They set up two different types of school, one for the real Native Americans, now being called public schools. The other school became private acting schools, where they trained foreigners on how to act like Native Americans. Tens of thousands of original Native children were taken from their families and sent to distant regimented institutions, which later became known as public school today. These boarding schools were designed as theaters of cultural erasure, and to inject European Roman Christian ideology into their veins. Upon arrival, children were stripped of their traditional clothing and put on uniforms, their hair was cut short, and they were forbidden to speak their native languages. The curriculum focused on vocational training for boys and domestic skills for girls. The vibrant songs, stories, and spiritual teachings of their ancestors were replaced with rote memorization of English and Christian doctrine. Children who wanted to learn their own culture were beaten and kicked out of school. The emotional and psychological toll on these children was immense. The trauma of these experiences left deep scars. The script of the boarding school system was one of profound cruelty. These things are still going on in the world today in America. The natives are the so-called Black Americans who were replaced by foreign people, actors, who were trained on how to be Native Americans by the government, directors. They are paid actors, which explains why they paid a lot of these $5 Indian tribes. Like we said, they paid them to stick to the script. It was a policy that created stolen generations, children alienated from both their own heritage and the dominant society. Resilience, recognition, and the unfinished performance. The long and tragic play orchestrated by government acts has left an indelible mark on Native American communities. The scripts of removal, allotment, confinement, and forced assimilation inflicted deep wounds. Yet, the curtain has not fallen on the story of Native peoples. Instead, what we witness today is an extraordinary performance of resilience. Despite centuries of policies designed to erase them, Native cultures are alive, adapting, and asserting their right to self-determination. The legacy of these harmful government acts continues to manifest in contemporary challenges. Disparities in health, education, and economic opportunity persist. The fight for treaty rights, land reclamation, and environmental protection is ongoing. However, alongside these challenges, there is a powerful resurgence of indigenous voices. Native activists, artists, scholars, and leaders are reclaiming their narratives. They are rewriting the script, moving from tragic figures to protagonists of their own future. Recognition of the historical injustices is a crucial first act towards reconciliation. The story of Native Americans is not over. It is an unfinished performance. The final act must be one of true partnership, respect, and the full restoration of sovereignty.